Now, in addition to skill variety and task identity, we also have to deal with task significance. And task significance is the degree to which the job, in some way, shape, or form, has an impact on the lives of other people. To some extent, all jobs obviously matter. They perform something, they provide a service, they contribute to the greater good. But some jobs are more significant than others. And so, for example, if you were to take the position of an actual surgeon, right, someone who operates on others in a hospital setting of some type, has a great degree of task significance because they are responsible for the livelihood of certain people. And so arguably they have a high degree of task significance because they have an impact on whether or not those people continue to live. And so those positions are greater or more in terms of motivation, or at least the job itself is more motivating because it incorporates that element. In positions with not a lot of task significance, right? Let's say telemarketer, for example, to where it's difficult to see how you positively impact the life of someone else. Then that might be inherently unmotivating because that degree or that element isn't necessarily present. They have a very low amount of task significance. The next element that needs to be present is what we call autonomy. And autonomy simply is having the freedom to select how and when particular tasks are performed. You know, if you work in the type of occupation or in a particular setting to which you have to get permission to use the restroom, you arguably don't have a great degree of autonomy in your position. But if you have the opportunity to choose not only the time to which work is done, but also the manner in which it's done, right? The process is really up to you. It's not dictated in some type of standard operating procedure or something similar. Then you have a great degree of autonomy, and that really implies flexibility to control what it is that you do and how you do it. So jobs that are obviously heavy on autonomy include being self-employed, so obviously being your own boss. Professors obviously have a high degree of autonomy. They have that academic freedom to choose how to present the material, the manner in which they communicate it, and the different elements that they use to actually present material. All have high degrees of autonomy. Whereas positions like military personnel, even police officers, really have a low degree of autonomy because they're very rigid in terms of what the structure is for the work, how they handle specific situations. They are generally streamlined to avoid any type of inconsistencies with regards to performance in various situations. And so arguably those jobs don't necessarily have a great degree of autonomy. That doesn't necessarily mean in their own right that those jobs are inherently unmotivating. It just means that they might be a little low on that particular element here. But as you can see, there's going to be 5 of them. And so as long as a majority are present, it generally would lead to a relatively motivating job, at least from the position itself. All right, the last element on the job characteristics model is what we call feedback. And feedback we all probably know in varying degrees, right? Feedback being information that we receive from others related to our performance. But feedback in the job characteristics model is very different than the typical feedback we receive from a manager or a coworker regarding our work. Feedback refers to your knowledge that you receive in terms of your performance that you get from the job itself. So the degree that you receive knowledge of your performance from the job itself. And so what this looks like is as you do your work, as you perform the functions and the daily responsibilities of your job or occupation, do you get feedback from actually just doing your work? Meaning, does someone have to actually tell you if you're doing a good job or not? Or do you get feedback simply from doing the work? For example, Stand-up comedians have a great degree of feedback present in their jobs because they get instant feedback as to whether or not they're performing their job well, right? The audience either laughs or doesn't, and that can be very, very awkward if there is silence after a joke is told. And so that provides you instant feedback from the course of your position. And so maybe in positions where they're service related and you have a direct access to the public, maybe you have a higher degree of feedback because you know whether or not you're doing a good job based upon the feedback that you're receiving from your customers, right? But a production worker, for example, may not get feedback from their job, especially if they're producing tangible products that are going to be consumed at a later date, but also in a different location. They don't necessarily get the opportunity to get feedback from their work because the consumption of the product is so far removed from when it is actually created. So the importance of this model here isn't necessarily pinpoint why jobs are inherently unmotivating, but more importantly, to actually figure out how do we improve the motivation that the job brings. Remember that we're looking at things from a number of different standpoints, right? Not just personal drives, not just managerial actions, but the job or the work itself, how that impacts motivation. And so from an organizational perspective, we have the duty and the obligation really to design jobs that are going to be more interesting and more satisfying, because ultimately jobs that are more interesting and satisfying are going to lead to reduced turnover, reduced absenteeism, which is going to have a significant impact on productivity and ultimately an impact on quality and on profits as well, because you're going to have customers that are obviously more satisfied with the product if it's good quality, no faults and defects and those types of things. And so it's very important to incorporate this. Some jobs are going to be very difficult to try and make more motivating simply because of the work that they do. But there are certain things that you could do, kind of keying in on each of these 5 elements as a way of trying to identify and pinpoint what could we do to make them more motivating.